Greetings, people of Earth. This is DCL 927-1973, and welcome to the mid-month update of the Disneyland Magical Audio Tour. Salutations, Brian.
Thank you for that wonderful greeting, Garco.
Well, we're going to do a mid-month update, even though I said we weren't initially, because I went through those Tomorrowland tracks I had mentioned really quickly, and I got them all done. In fact, the entire Chapter 15 is now fully updated. There's no coming soons on there. Everything that needed to be redone got redone. And Chapter 15, for those who don't know, is the original 1950s Tomorrowland. So a lot of retro future stuff. A lot of fun. And I'm joined once again with Brian. And before we get started, I just want to quickly mention, I'm not going to do our usual rundown of every single thing like I normally do, because we did that in the earlier update this month, but I just want to mention one thing. The Legacy of Walt Disney episode, number 3 in our Magical Music of Walt Disney series, is now released. We released it earlier this month, and it is available on our regular podcast feed. And it is 30 songs from 1963 to 1973. So be sure to go and check that out. Other than that, let's move on to the audio tour update. We have a lot of new tracks to tell you about. So that's why I wanted to keep the intro brief. So
That's a brief intro. Let me just say something about that episode.
Oh, sure.
It was
Go
great.
right ahead.
I listened to it. And if you think you know the songs already, think again, because Chris he added some extra magic to these tracks, so that made it really fun. So
I do my own versions and embellishments and add
it's really cool. I really enjoyed this last episode.
Well, like I said, the vast majority of new tracks are from the original Tomorrowland from 1955 to 1966. I say the original 1950s Tomorrowland, even though it does extend into the 60s, because it began in the 50s. So there's a little explanation for why I named it what I named it. So let's first just go through everything in that chapter, Brian, and then we'll go back, and if there's anything we need to fill in with the other chapters, we will. A lot of it is
blast off right away, huh?
We're going to blast off right away. But the thing is, a lot of the tracks on the other chapters that I've added, and there's only a few, they're directly linked to this chapter. I redid them because I redid the version on this chapter, and they're on both chapters, or a variation of it is on both chapters. Alright, so let's blast off to the moon. The track you're listening to in the background is actually one of the tracks on this page. It's track number 5, I believe, which is a 2.5 hour space age pop. It's a genre of music from the mid-50s that sort of was thinking about the future, and it has a lot of future themes in it that we sort of think of when we think of science fiction and whatnot.
God, 2.5 hours. That'll help pass the time while you're waiting to see your dentist.
So, Tomorrow Lounge, 2 hours and 19 minutes, the music of tomorrow. That's what we're listening to in the background as I go through the updates. So the first thing is I redid just the very ending part of my Dateline Disneyland Tomorrowland segment. Just after the blast off, I changed the way it fades out at the end a little bit different. Other than that, it's exactly the same. I just made a minor tweak. The rest of it's a little bit more involved than that. So, the Monsanto Hall of Chemistry, a lot of these tracks don't have audio. They never, back then they didn't generally have recorded audio. Sometimes they did, but for the most part they didn't. So I sort of used my imagination and came up with things to represent what didn't have actual audio, and this would be one of those. I found a old vintage children's album from the 50s that talks about atoms and molecules. It's from the same era, it's the same topic of discussion, so I'm using it to represent the Hall of Chemistry. The Wishful Night from the Kaiser Aluminum Hall of Fame is authentic audio. It was an exhibit in that Hall of Fame, and it was on the site before, but I cleaned it up and I improved it, made it a little better. I had some background music that I added to it. I took that out and I just have the straight thing with nothing added to it. Space Station X1 was on the site already. I just did some cleanup on it. Same with The World Beneath Us. I did the announcements. I just did some cleanup on it. Now, The World Beneath Us, which was a film that you watched about the discovery of fossil fuels, and it talked about dinosaurs and things like that, is missing media. It doesn't exist anymore as far as we know. It's lost in the annals of time. So what I did was I used the Rite of Spring music from Fantasia to represent this. So this is the entire Fantasia Rite of Spring music representing this film.
That sounds appropriate.
And it's the version from 1982 that was re-recorded in stereo by, in digital. The original was also stereo, but re-recorded in stereo digital by Irwin Costal, one of the very first digital recorded albums for sale publicly. Okay, so the next thing is Dutch Boy Color Gallery, and I found a vintage radio advertisement with a little jingle. I looped it around and play it twice, so it's a little longer. Still only 30 seconds, but I'm using that to represent the Dutch Boy Color Gallery. Now, the art of animation was a exhibit that opened in the 60s, sort of near where you'd find the Tomorrowland Terrace now, sort of at that eastern end of that building where the Tomorrowland Terrace is now located. But there used to be an exhibit inside. That's also where the Dutch Boy Color Gallery was located. But when that closed, it became the Art of Animation. And it was basically an exhibit about Disney animation. So to represent that, I have an hour and 20-minute track of classic Disney songs from animated features from from the beginning, from Snow White up to Sleeping Beauty, because that's what they were promoting when this first opened, was Sleeping Beauty. That was the latest movie that had just opened in theaters, so it was kind of a tie into Sleeping Beauty.
So if somebody asks you where is the Art of Animation, don't tell them about the resort in Florida. This was the first one.
Right.
This was the exhibit in Disneyland. So.
Yes. Now, the Crane Bathroom of Tomorrow was a exhibit sponsored by Crane Plumbing. They're still around today. They do fit. Sometimes if you look in a public toilet, you might see Crane written on it, on the porcelain. But they sponsored this exhibit. At the outside of the exhibit, there was a fountain of flamingos made out of pipes, and it was They had little nozzles you could turn the water. That's what the children in that picture are doing. You could turn the
really
water on and
interactive
off.
this exhibit was, yeah.
And then you walked through and you saw like what the future bathroom would look like. So again, I didn't have any audio. I don't know if there ever was any audio. So I found an old song, originally from the 1920s, called Singing in the Bathtub. And I added a bunch of water and bathtub and bubbling noises, going down the drain noises.
Yeah, you did a good job on that one. It's fun.
Fun Photos was an exhibit sort of located where the Starcade is now, where it was. I guess the Starcade is kind of like there, but it isn't really there anymore.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of like an overflow merchandise area now.
It still has the sign Starcade,
yeah.
But they don't use it anymore as an arcade.
No pinball machines in there anymore.
No, but that used to be Fun Photos, and what it was is exactly what you see in this picture. They had little cutout displays that you could take a picture. They had like one of the Kodak people take your picture, and then you could buy a souvenir picture. And to represent that, I have myself saying, "Say cheese," and then you hear a camera. And then I picked a bunch of songs about smiling or taking pictures or making memories and things like that from that era, from the early 60s. So I have like put on a happy face. What other songs do I have? Memories Are Made of These. Smile, originally from that Charlie Chaplin movie, The Kids. Smile, though your heart is aching. But all instrumentals, all like mid-century pop, like jazzy sounding. So right with the era where this was in operation. Fashion and Fabrics Through the Ages. This was sponsored by Monsanto. It actually replaced Fun Photos. And it was what was there when they tore down Tomorrowland to build the new one. So this sort of was at the tail end of the original Tomorrowland. It was only there about a year. And it was just a walkthrough exhibit about the history of fashion. And so to represent that, I have like a bunch of songs to sort of represent different eras of time. It starts out with like cavemen, and I have like drums, like primitive drumming music. And then I have sort of like Egyptian music, and then I have Renaissance music, green sleeves. And then I have like Baroque music with a harpsichord. And then like cowboy music, and then turn of the century silent movie music, and then like big band era music, and then the last song is sort of like a fashion show 1960s kind of a song.
Nice. You really ran the gamut of
so I just
musical
sort of,
eras there. Okay.
Sort of matched the music for the theme of what the exhibit was. So the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is a block here, as you can see. When I do like a block of the same topic, I sort of set it up this way so I only have to write one liner note for the whole thing. Otherwise I'm like, now what can I say differently about this that I haven't already said? Because it's sort of all in the same categories. So, all of these are new. Some of them were on the site already, but I updated them. The introduction is Walt Disney talking about the film, and then the original theatrical trailer for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And the second one here is the entire musical score of the movie, the 1954 movie.
That's a super bonus there. Wow.
And then the next track was already on the website, but I vastly improved the audio quality. And this was the Thurl Ravenscroft narration that you would hear as you toured the original 20,000 Leagues exhibit. The next track is Takata and Fugue, and then the main title from 20,000 Leagues played on the pipe organ, sort of to represent Captain Nemo's organ. And then I have the cue music and announcements which are by Peter Renaday playing in the role of Captain Nemo.
Okay.
From 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea at Walt Disney World. So it's the music and the announcements you heard while you were in the queue for Walt Disney World's version. And then I have the music for both the 20,000 Leagues submarine tour in Disneyland Paris and their Discoveryland. And then I have Tokyo Disney Sea's music that you hear when you're on their 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea attraction, which is sort of a simulator. You don't actually go in the water, but it looks like you do. It's really clever.
You do actually. Yeah, I've been on it.
They actually put water on the in front of you, but the props
you're not
are all dry.
Entirely submerged.
The props are all dry. And the reason they did that is and it looks like they're wet, so you might have been confused, Brian, because it literally looks like they're underwater when they're not. But the reason they did it that way is so they don't have to keep repainting them all the time, and they're always nice. So they figured out a way to make it look like you're underwater when you're really
Wow, they fooled me
not.
then.
Yeah. So the next segment is the Circarama, the Circle Vision. It wasn't called Circle Vision until 1967, but it was called Circarama, and it was actually sponsored by a automobile manufacturer, American Motors, and specifically the Nash Rambler. They actually used the Nash Rambler to film the first Circle Vision film called A Tour of the West. Sure. They mounted a camera on top of a Nash Rambler and drove all around the western United States, and that was the first film. Now, to represent that, I have a bunch of songs from the America the Beautiful original album from the 60s, and this was all music from America the Beautiful, the actual attraction. And I took the songs that are sort of Western in nature, and then I added a few others that I found that are similar in sound. It's like a chorus of singers, including Thurl Ravenscroft, and there's a lot of musical groups around at that time that had that similar sound that Thurl Ravenscroft was actually involved in. So it's sort of fun how the music from that album has him on it, and then the songs I found elsewhere also have Thurl Ravenscroft on it, so it all sounds like it's part of the same thing. But they're all songs about, the Western. Like it has the song California Here I Come, Home on the Range, Oklahoma, and just for Brian, I have a song about Texas. He's from Texas.
Yeehaw.
Now, America the Beautiful introduction was the original Circarama introduction from the early 60s that you would hear when you were waiting for the show to begin. And then America the Beautiful musical score is that entire album, uncut. And I re-edited it. And I actually, on chapter number 26, Disneyland Records, I've had that album there for a long time.
Yeah, that's a great album.
But I updated it. I changed it because I went through and cleaned everything up and improved the audio quality. So you'll find on chapter 26, it's split up into side A and side B, but this is both side A and side B together. And this was the music they used for the original America the Beautiful.
Have you ever seen the original Circarama film? I don't know if that's out there for anybody to see.
It might be, but I don't know if it is. But the original was A Tour of the West. I haven't seen it. And then in 1959, they replaced it with America the Beautiful, but it was a different version. I've seen the one from the 60s, but I've never seen this version. The next section is the Monsanto House of the Future, and I have several tracks representing this. The first one is a little announcement about the Monsanto Corporation and their involvement with the House of the Future. And the second track is some music that is sort of the kind of music you think of when you think of 1950s suburbia. Sort of Leave It to Beaver type music. Like
How do you say
Holiday
that word?
for Strings. Suburbarama. I made that word up.
Oh, did you?
To represent what this is.
Yeah.
It's a Suburbarama explosion. The next track is an actual newsreel from the 50s they showed in theaters where they're talking about the House of the Future in Disneyland. The next track has been on the site for quite some time. It's the House of the Future segment from the 1958 episode of the Disneyland TV series, An Adventure in the Magic Kingdom. And then the next track is the actual audio that you heard when you toured the actual House of the Future. Now, I had this on the website already, but this is a cleaned up, new and improved version. And then the other track here is from the recent House of the Future animated short with Mickey Mouse, you know, the new Mickey shorts. They did a House of the Future episode. This is the soundtrack from that. I thought it would be fun to include that.
The duck.
You mean Donald? Ludwig?
Not Donald. It's the inventor. Oh my
Ludwig.
gosh. Ludwig von Drake. Yeah. He's in
Lest
that. That's one of the few I've seen, actually. It's a good one.
TWA Moonliner, the original Rocket to the Moon attraction. Some stuff I had on the site before and some added things. The first track is a jingle for Trans World Airlines, who was the original sponsor for the Rocket to the Moon attraction. So I have a really funny early 60s radio jingle for Trans World Airlines. It's catchy. Be careful. Don't listen to it if you don't want to have it in your head all day. The next track is an improved version. It is the audio that you would hear when you were waiting for the ride. And it sounded like an airport of the future. It sounded like, attention passengers. And they have a lot of references to animators. And they said, attention, Johnson and Hench. Like, you know, because they were animators. So they do a lot of stuff like that. It's kind of fun.
That's clever.
Yeah. Now, the Rocket to the Moon Mission Control Center, the original, it was a film. If you look carefully in this picture, you can see how it was shown. You waited in this display area, and there was a TV monitor. You can see it up on the side. You see it? And they showed a mission control film. It wasn't an actual room with audio animatronics originally. It was a film. So this is audio from that, and it's actually taken from Dateline Disneyland. Because they showed part of the film on Dateline Disneyland. So that's how I got that audio. I don't have the full audio of it. Now,
so it's like a pre-show area then.
It's a pre-show, exactly.
Okay, cool.
And later that became an audio animatronic area with the mission control. But originally that's what it looked like. And it had a TV monitor.
Oh, to go back in time, huh?
And then, so I had already on the website a version of the Rocket to the Moon audio, but now I added another version. So there's two versions now. The first one, Flight 1, is new. I think it's an older version, and they're similar but different. Like, they sort of say the same things but in a different way, and then a lot of the sound effects are the same, so it's interesting to compare them. So the other one was already on the website, and that's Flight 2 now. It used to just be Flight 1, but now that I have 2, that turned into Flight 2. So the other two were already on the website. Now, Thimble Drum Flight Circle was already on the site, but I added a little introduction to it to kind of explain better what the heck this track is, because it was a little confusing. Hobbyland was an outdoor venue, just had like souvenir booths, located near the Thimble Drum Flight Circle, sort of tying into the theme of it because they sold models, like model planes and model cars and all sorts of stuff like that, yo-yos. Anything you find in a hobby shop today was sort of sold at this place. And as you can see from the picture, they sold quite a few hats as well. So, to represent that, I found a bunch of old 50s and early 60s commercials that talk about models and planes and toys and things like that. So that's how I represented that.
So this area, Thimble Drum, this is where you see like the model airplanes on, I guess it's a string or some sort of rope.
That Thimble Drum was the name of a manufacturer of model airplanes.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that's.
And I think I've seen the Spaceman like blast off and land in this area.
Yes, they used that same area for the Spaceman to launch from. In fact, I have a track representing that as well.
Oh, there it is on track
right there.
60. Yeah, there you go.
So the Astro Jets was already on the site, and what this is kind of a funny square dance of jet engines that was used on the Adventure in the Magic Kingdom episode of Disneyland in 1958. And I actually, from another Disney endeavor called Donald and the Wheel, they have an extended piece of music that's the same music from this, but just an instrumental. So I added the extra music to make this longer, and while that instrumental music is playing, I had the sounds of jets whooshing. So you're hearing this like cowboy hoedown music with swoosh, swoosh. It's kind of a funny thing.
I'm really excited to listen to all these. I wish I had listened to them beforehand.
So the flying saucers, I used a piece of music that's actually in the medley that you're listening to right now. That when I heard it the first time, I was like, this sounds like flying saucers. So what I did was I added a bunch of space science fiction flying saucer sound effects, and I play that piece of music along with it to represent, because again, there was no audio to represent this attraction. The space
I just wanted to say that
oh, go ahead.
Chris runs a lot of these audio samples by me through Facebook Messenger.
That's one that I sent to him already.
And I listened to him, and I don't give him the thumbs up. I just really say, hey, that's a great choice. You know? I just think it's amazing how you find these little pieces of audio
I'm excited
to
share stuff right away, so I send it to him.
He's not asking for my approval, but I do appreciate you doing
that. It's a one-man operation. I do take constructive criticism when I need it, though.
Yeah, and I think you're looking for it, and I offer it.
So the Space Bar was a outdoor fast food place, sort of located near where the Carousel building is located now, next door to the Skyway. So to represent this, I found some drive-in theater concessions ads, like hamburgers and stuff like that, and I sort of made a little fun little mix to represent. Skyway to Fantasyland, I just tweaked this a little bit, and I fixed the ending. I didn't like how it sounded, like there was a weird transition, so I just cleaned it up. Otherwise, it's the same. The Tomorrowland station of the Disneyland Railroad, it's similar to what I had before, but I used a different piece of music and cleaned it up using the materials that I had put together already for the Disneyland Railroad tracks that I talked about in the last update. This stuff was already all on the page, so I'll skip it. So this is sort of the Autopia section, and they have all different things representing the Autopia. The first one is a safety announcement from the 50s, the actual announcement, with the sounds of the Autopia cars under it, that I added the sound of the cars to it. The next is the piece of music that we often affiliate with the Autopia, It goes do 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 do. You know that song?
Now I
It's
do.
kind of called the Autopia song, and that's this music here. And then the Midget Autopia, which also uses that music, takes a piece of audio from the Adventure in the Magic Kingdom where he's talking about the Midget Autopia. If you can't reach the pedals, you can't drive. So the small fry have to look for a different model.
Oh,
so
that's a great photo, by the way.
Now the Fantasyland
Autopia. There aren't very many Midget Autopia photos out there.
Oh, there's a few. If you type in Google Midget Autopia, you'll actually see quite a few. Okay. Fantasyland Autopia is the announcements for the Fantasyland station, which opened in 1959. Now they've combined both tracks, the Tomorrowland and Fantasyland, into one extended, longer Autopia, and there's no longer a Fantasyland station. Tomorrowland Viewliner, the piece of music I was using for that is now being used for the Disneyland Railroad, and instead I'm not using any music. It's just the dialogue with the sound of the train under it. So this is cleaned up and it doesn't have music, it just has the sound effect of a train moving as you hear the... And this is actually not there was no dialogue on the actual train, so I'm using a little artistic license there. It's actually the audio you heard while you were at the station waiting for the train. Phantom
so there
boats.
Was no onboard audio, like when you were... No description of what you were seeing?
No. Nothing.
Okay.
So the Phantom boats, this is another one I sent you, and you were like...
Yeah.
You said something kind of cheeky about it. I forget what you said. So it's sort of like a Batman or James Bond sounding kind of a thing, but it's more... Oh,
yeah, that's right. I think I'd said it sounded very Sean Connery or 007-ish. Yeah.
Well, that was intent. That's what I wanted it to sound like.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to sound like sort of like a jet boat, like sort of... Mm-hmm. But there was no audio in actuality for this, so I just came up with a piece of music that sounded right, and I added the sound of a jet engine under it. So it sounds like you're on the boat. Yeah, it's cool.
It's very good.
The Motorboat Cruise is very similar to the Phantom boats, but unlike the Phantom boats, there was music in the queue area for the motorboats. So, and I also have a announcement that you heard when you pulled into the station. It says, please remain seated. So I have that at the beginning. And Then I have the song Sailing, Sailing over the Bounting Main. Instead of hearing James Bond music, you hear more sailing music. And then you hear the sound of the motor running, revving as you're... So it sounds like you're riding it. I do remember riding the motorboats, and I remember how loud the engine was.
Yeah,
you couldn't
that's
hear
one
anything.
thing I definitely remember about it.
Yeah.
I don't remember all these rocks, though.
So the Motorboat Cruise, Submarine Voyage, they shared the same cue music. So this is just sort of a selection of stereotypical songs about the ocean or the sea, like Sailor's Hornpipe, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, Sailing, Sailing, which I mentioned earlier, What Would You Do with a Drunken Sailor, and stuff like that.
Throw them overboard.
So the Yacht Bar, which didn't have any audio, I found more of those types of songs, actually from the SpongeBob SquarePants soundtrack, which they in turn borrowed from other things. But that's where I found them, is because they're all sort of compiled for that. So I have 3 songs, I think maybe 4, they're short, and then in between each one I have like the sound of a naval whistle, like doo doo doo. I can't make the sound of a, you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. Dee dee dee. It's like super high.
The Tomorrowland Yacht Bar, the Oddsman Quartet, I had a track on here already. I've cleaned it up and extended it. And the first song is actually the Wellingtons, but they sound, or the Kingston Trio. Oh, no, it is the Wellingtons. I said Kingston Trio because I have that written down here, but that was to sort of compare their sound was similar. But the first song is the Wellingtons, but it sounds like the same group. It's that same style, so I wanted to include it because they're singing A Whale of a Tale. So then I open with that, and then I have several songs from the album that they released called High and Dry. So you also find the complete album on Chapter 26, Disneyland Records. Right. Tomorrowland Maritime Band is a bunch of military songs played by the Naval Military Band that have a nautical theme to them. Like the, what's the song? It's Anchors Away, my boys, anchors away.
Oh, yeah, that's the Navy song. Yep.
And in between each song, I also have the whistle. This time I use the whistle from the sailing ship Columbia. So that separates each song. And now here's my Submarine Voyage section. I think this is the last thing. Yeah, this is it for new. Because the monorail had already all that was already there. So, in addition to the tracks I already had, I redid the queue area announcements. I cleaned them up and improved them. I also added a version of the Submarine Voyage from the original, the 1959 version. Now this is just part of it. It's not the full thing. And it actually comes from Disneyland 59 because they played most of it and showed the ride when you watch that TV special Disneyland 59. So that's where I got this from. And then I have the version that came around in the 60s and they used until their attraction closed in the 90s. But this is an improved version of it. And I cleaned it up and everything else. So is there anything, Brian, on any of the other chapters, because I don't have the list in front of me and I can't remember a thing that I didn't talk about already?
Well, you got stuff from you had a track from Chapter 9, few from Chapter 11, Fantasyland, and then Chapter 26, you've been mentioning a couple there. But
okay, the one from Chapter 9 is the Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, which is the same thing from America the Beautiful. I replaced what was already there. That track was already there, but since I cleaned up that album, I put the new cleaned up version of that song. So that's all that is. It's the same thing that was already there. So Chapter 11, what was on Chapter 11? Yeah, this is all
11? Your Autopia.
Right. I actually want to show that.
Yeah, let's go there.
That's a whole segment that's sort of fun.
Yeah.
So Chapter 11 is the original Fantasyland from 1955 to 1982. And in this chapter, I have a segment which I call The World of Tomorrow Meets the Land of Fantasy. And this is where I have all the attractions. Of overlap here. Right. This is where I have all the attractions that sort of bled over from Tomorrowland in that area where the Matterhorn is, So a lot of these are the same thing that's on the Tomorrowland. Oh, there he is, Paul Frees.
I love it. This is such a source of contention amongst Disneyland fans. Like, is this attraction in Fantasyland or Tomorrowland?
Yeah, there is a confusion there.
They anchor, no pun intended. Like the
Motorboat Cruise. A lot of these are exactly the same. Right. Yeah. A lot of these are exactly the same as what I talked about. The Viewliner is different. It's similar but different because these are different announcements. For those who don't know, there was 2 Viewliner stations and it was a round trip. So you could actually get on, and there were only 2 trains. So one train stopped at Fantasyland and one train stopped in Tomorrowland. There were 2 stations. Depending on which station, depended which train you rode. And so the Fantasyland Viewliner had slightly different announcements. Because that was for the Fantasyland station. which is actually located about where It's a Small World is now. Otherwise, these are pretty much the same as what was on the Tomorrowland page. So the reason I added these here is because I had already finished them for Tomorrowland, with the one exception. So I just went ahead and got that done so that the whole block could be finished. So then what else did I add, Brian?
The Motorboat Cruise, 90 and 91 there.
No. I mean, besides Chapter 11.
Oh, besides Chapter 11? I'm sorry. Paul Frees is a little distracting.
Yes.
He agrees with all of your additions here, by the way.
Yes.
The only other chapter you haven't talked about is Chapter 26.
I did talk about that. That's
the America the Beautiful.
Yeah, that's stuff. Where I put the improved America the Beautiful. So yeah. I'm not going to bother. But I would like to show you what I'm going to do now, what I'm working on right now, which is coming soon. Which is I actually asked around and somebody suggested I work on this chapter next. So I decided I would. So this is another Tomorrowland chapter.
Our best supporters actually requested this. So.
Yes. So this is actually, there's 4 Tomorrowland pages, and each one covers a different era. This is not the beginning of the new Tomorrowland, but after it had been around a few years and a lot of changes had been made up until the early 90s. So this sort of covers from 1974 to about 1995, let's say. And then the next page would be 95 up to Tomorrowland now. So what I'm working on is actually way down at the bottom. I have a separate section here called the Tomorrowland That Never Was. And I have 2 sections here. There's Tomorrowland 2055, which was a concept for the new Tomorrowland, which never got built. And then I also have Discovery Bay, which was a Tony Baxter idea. It was actually going to be placed where Galaxy's Edge is now. But this was the original thinking for that area, was to do an island at the top of the world, 20,000 leagues under the sea, Jules Verne area. And then the police came and said, "You can't do that, Tony." No, it's actually an ambulance.
I'll tell you, after having been to Galaxy's Edge a few times, I'd much rather have this.
So what I did, I do have a few pieces of authentic audio describing the area, and then I have a mock-up attraction with Thurl Ravenscroft describing what one of the attractions would have been. Other than that, I had to be creative and sort of come up with things to represent these attractions, because these never got built and there's no audio for a lot of them. For example, Professor Marvel's Gallery of Illusions would evolve into Journey into Imagination. If you look at the picture, you can see a little dragon standing on a podium, and then the Professor Marvel sort of looks like Dreamfinder quite a bit. So this eventually evolved into Journey into Imagination, so I'm using the Imagination song, couple instrumental pieces from the Journey into Imagination to represent that. For the Lost River Delta, I'm using the music from Journey to the Center of the Earth from Tokyo Disney Sea.
Oh,
Plus,
I love that perfection.
The music
I love that picture,
from
though.
the music from the Primeval World on the railroad. For Fireworks Factory,
T-Rex attacking the Jungle Cruise boat there?
It looks like it. Doesn't it?
What's going on?
I think they were going to
Earth.
repurpose the animals from the Disneyland Railroad for this, I think. Yeah, I don't know for
that's
sure.
Cool. I love that picture.
For the Fireworks Factory, this was actually going to be an interactive arcade that had a Chinatown theme. There's going to be like a Chinatown district with a Chinese restaurant. And then this, which looked like a Fisherman's Wharf near Chinatown in San Francisco at the turn of the century.
Yeah, very.
And what I have for this is, and I found out some interesting information that I thought I would share about this. It's really bizarre. So, The music I'm using is sort of Chinese New Year kind of music with the sound of firecrackers going off and the sound of gunshots, because this was supposed to be an arcade in a fireworks factory. And then at the beginning, this is what's funny. There's a just because I want people to understand what this is, and playing this piece of music was like, okay, this is something Asian, because I play at the beginning that do 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 bong. Apparently, and I didn't even know this until I looked into it, because I was trying to find the name of that song. It's not a song. It's not anything. It was an invention it was an American thing that we created to represent the people of Asia. So whenever you hear that, it's supposed to sort of flag you into...
Give you an oriental vibe.
Yeah, right. But it's actually a nonsense thing that was never part of any piece of music at all. There was a name for it. It's like the Asian intro, or I don't know. I looked it up on Wikipedia, and there was a whole thing about it. And it talked about all the popular songs that have used it, like Kung Fu Fighting and what else? I'm Turning Japanese, and all those really bizarre songs. So anyway, it's not a very nice thing, because we sort of created that to represent Asian people. And if you actually play it for an Asian person from Asia that doesn't know, they'll be like, they won't even think it sounds like it's an Asian piece of music. They won't even is that American? What is that? They don't even recognize it as being Asian. So anyway, I just thought that was funny, and you learn something new every day when you do these sort of things. I'm also working on the rest of this chapter. I've already finished all of this stuff. Transtar is going to be fun for those 80s fans out there. I have a bunch of songs that have keytar music, such as the Beverly Hills Cop theme, do 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 do, and all that type of stuff. So then I have the Star Tours section is all done, but I've been working on my Captain EO section. So 80s fans are gonna be loving the new tracks coming.
80s fans rejoice.
Yes, and I have a bunch of I'm redoing the whole Captain EO show with the full soundtrack, bunch of stuff. And I also have been working on my Magic Journeys. Got a bunch of that stuff. Wonders of China. I have the Dusty the Delta Air Lion Delta pre-show, which is sort of a rarity. It's hard to find that. Yeah. And right now I'm actually working on American Journeys. So that's where I am right now. And then I'll eventually get the rest of this chapter done. So that's my next project. You can look for some 70s, 80s, 90s Tomorrowland stuff coming soon to a DisneyChris.com near you. So I hope everybody...
There you go.
I hope everybody enjoyed our update for May, mid-month. Did you enjoy it, Brian?
Yes, it was very informative, and I look forward to listening to all of these wonderful tracks.
Did you have a blast from the past?
No, I'm really excited. I feel bad. I should have listened to all of these beforehand, but I got sidetracked.
Well, they're not going anywhere. There's plenty of time to listen to them.
I'm not going anywhere.
Right. Well, that concludes the update, and we will be back in June. And since I've described everything that I'm going to be adding, I probably won't have to go into much detail because you've already heard what I'm going to add. So I don't have to explain it all. But
well, I'm sure you'll find some stuff to talk about.
I always
but we'll
have
be back.
something to talk about.
We'll be back on June 1st.
Yes. And who knows how much I'll get done by then. So time will tell.
Stay tuned to Facebook, and Chris will let you know.
The Facey Spacey, the Twitty page, and we'll see you all in June. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.